Good morning, everyone. Today is a beautiful August morning, and I have quite the to-do list. My freshman just went off to school yesterday, and I don't plan on starting homeschool anytime soon with my younger kids. So I decided that I would take just this next month and do a lot of preserving, and obviously there's some harvesting that needs to be done in the garden. So stay tuned. Today I am going to be making some chicken broth and canning that, and then I'm also going to be making some grape juice with a steam juicer. So if you've ever been interested in how a steam juicer works, keep watching, and make sure you hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more awesome content, and let's get started. I have all my grapes from the grapevine rinsed off and put in the steam juicer, and so now I just need to turn it on and get that process going. I'll show you what I'm doing as I'm doing it. I also got out a giant stock pot. You can see behind me. I'm just gonna throw a chicken in there and get that going and let it simmer for the rest of the day. So it comes in this colander, and then underneath here is I'll show you, just hold on a second. We have the top basket that is like a strainer. It's full of the fruit that you're going to be juicing. And then the second part has this hole on the bottom of it where all the steam comes up. And this is where the juice is going to be collected. And then from this point, it has a little tube here that you can clamp off as the juice is being like gathered in this bottom section down here. And then once it is full enough, or once you have your jars ready, you can go ahead and unclamp it and let the juice flow freely. And then down here, I've already filled it with water. And then down here is basically just a kind of like a stock pot. And I just fill it with water, and then I'll turn up the heat until it comes to a boil, and then I'll put it down to a simmer so that it gently steams or consistently steams the fruit. And it does have that little notch at the bottom that the hose comes out of. So then you just put that little piece on top of the bottom and then put this on top of here. All right, so first things first is I'm going to chop up some celery. I'm gonna do like 2 big ones. Last time I didn't even have any vegetables to go into my broth, which is totally fine. And then I'm going to use an onion, and I'm going to be using some garlic. I've already went through all of the garlic that I grew in the garden, so I'm gonna have to plant more. And yes, you can. You wanna rinse those off for me? Grab your stool, that might be helpful. Oh, you gotta make sure that you rub inside there and get all that dirt out. Okay. I'm basically just quartering my onion so that it can, or maybe that's, I guess, in 3s. And then all I'm doing with this garlic is I'm just cutting the top part off so that the cloves are exposed.
Mom, since we have celery, could we have ants in the log?
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. And I'm just gonna throw this into the pot before I put the water in it. So now that I've got the onion and the garlic and the celery in there, I currently don't have any carrots, so I will not be using those. But now I'm just gonna roughly chop the chicken. Last time I didn't, and it worked just fine. So if you don't have the time to chop your chicken up, don't worry about it. Just make sure that all of the insides have been taken out. Right, so I just ended up throwing it in there almost whole because my knife was so stupidly dull. So that's what that looks like. Now I'm just gonna fill my pot up with water and put it back on the stove. All right, now I'm going out to the garden. I'm gonna pick quite a bit of oregano and sage. Normally I add peppercorns, but I'm out of peppercorn, so I'm just adding regular pepper. And I'll probably just strain it out before I can it. Some salt. And I'm just gonna add 2 star anise. All right, so I've added the lid and I turned it on high. I'm gonna bring it to a boil and then I'm gonna turn it back down to a simmer and just let it simmer. I'm setting it, forgetting it after that, and just letting it go until the rest of the day. And then I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm gonna do some things around the house and I'll come back later and do some canning. Got the steam building up in here. I turned the burner. It's not even warm up here yet, but it is warm to the touch here. Well, it's hot to the touch here. And I've got the burner on high just to try and help it boil a little faster. But once the steam rises, it starts to make the grapes break down into juice, and then it will come catch in this. Once I start seeing the juice here in this tube, I will let it kind of collect in there for a little bit, and then I'll open it up so that it can go into the jar. Over here, I've got my broth going. It's been a couple hours since I put it on. It's just been simmering away. And I believe I'm going to start cleaning the jars so I can get the canner going for that. I will also use some of the broth that I made for dinner. Another thing that I'm doing while I'm waiting for that stuff to be done is coring, and I do like an X in the bottom of my tomatoes, and then I core them and I put them in a bag. I'm just gonna stick them in the freezer. I don't have time to do the tomatoes today, and they are ripening too fast for me to keep up with. So basically, I keep out my heirlooms to eat fresh, and all of my Romas I have been freezing. I will also probably freeze a lot of my cherry tomatoes just because I have so many. I didn't plant one cherry tomato plant this year, and I have like 4 plants going, and that gives me plenty. I'm the only one that eats the cherry tomatoes besides my 5-year-old, and it's like few and far between when he eats them. So I will most likely cut them in half and put them in the freezer as well. I would recommend that if you're trying one of these, to make sure that you have your jar set up with the hose inside of it, because the clamp didn't hold it totally tight. It still did drip, so we'll see how much we get. So this is what I've got so far. I've got almost 1/2 gallon back there, and then I've got 3 quarts and 1 on its way. So as soon as this one's full, I think I'm gonna stop the juicer. Got 4 quarts and 1/2 gallon. I just took it off of the steaming pot and brought it over here to my sink. This is what it looks like after. It is like almost all the way to the bottom. I'm sure there's some juice left in it, but it was going so slow that I figured it'd probably be time for me to take it off and just give the rest of the chickens. My grape juice has cooled quite a bit. I'm going to stick it in the refrigerator until next week when I have the time to make some grape jelly with it. Turned out pretty good. I tasted it. It was a little sour, but it was really good. I'm gonna dump this into my heavy bottom stock pot, and I'm gonna hope for the best because the ball recipe calls for Concord grapes, and that's definitely not the type of grapes that I have. I'm not sure what kind of grapes they are because they were here when we moved in. So I know that they're not Concord grapes. They're a little bit smaller. They're not as sweet. They're a little bit tart. So I am just going to follow the recipe, and I'll just be doing that like freezer test with a plate in the freezer, and I'll just periodically test the jam's thickness to see if it will set up after I add the pectin and everything. So look at how beautifully purple that is. I could probably get away with less sugar. This is the only sugar that I have left. This is not gonna be enough cups to match that recipe. So I think I'm actually gonna go rogue and just kind of make something up, and hopefully it works. If it doesn't set up, that's okay. I will just use it for something else. Before I add any of the sugar to my grape juice that I have, I'm gonna get my grape juice boiling first. Hopefully I can then activate the natural pectin that's already in those grapes. That way I don't have to add as much sugar. I'm just kind of playing it by ear. Last year I did this, except instead of with sugar, I used molasses because that was what I had on hand, and it was a complete failure. So I watched a lot of Ruth Ann stuff, and I'm quite confident that I can get it to work. And so I'm gonna try it out and see if I can just cook it down and make it taste okay for my family for the year. Now that I've got it at a boil, it's kind of getting a little bit foamy, but that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and add my sugar. And stir it in. Oh my goodness. Don't do what I did. I walked away and it boiled over, so my kind son is stirring it while I'm gonna clean this up. Okay, what ended up happening was I added, so instead of adding just the rest of my sugar, I ran to the store, came back, added a little bit more sugar. I did not add as much as the recipe called for. It was 1 3/4 times more than the juice, and I felt like that was too much sugar. So I had 24 cups of juice, so I added 20 cups of sugar. I feel like that is more than sufficient. And I basically turned it all the way up, and then I went to do something else while my son was in here cleaning up the kitchen, and he was like, "Wow, it's boiling over." And so kindly he had taken it off, started stirring it for me so that it like settled down a little bit, but there was just a giant mess all over my stove. So got that cleaned up. It's back on the stove, simmering down. It smells like burnt sugar in here now because it got all over the stove, made some yummy smelling smoke. So yeah, we'll see if this works. I put a plate in the freezer to get really cold, so I plan on pulling that out and testing it here in maybe 10 minutes because it's been boiling for quite a while now. So test it and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, it's looking really nice, so I'm gonna go ahead and take out the glass plate that I have in the refrigerator. Not quite ready. So I will go ahead and rinse this off and put it back in the freezer What you want to see is you want it not to drip so much. You want it to slow right away as soon as it cools down. This is more of like a thick syrup. So I'm gonna keep it going and try it again in another maybe 10-20 minutes. Okay, what I'm doing here is I am taking my spoon and I am just scraping the top foam off and putting it in a different bowl. So that way I don't have a bunch of foam on top of my jelly. I take my cold plate. I'm going to put a little bit of this on there. And then I'm gonna, whoa, that's so not cold enough. My plate isn't cold enough. It was way better last time, so I think my plate wasn't cold enough. I'll have to wait and try it again. But it's getting jelly-like in consistency. See how it's cooling down? It gets thicker and thicker as it cools more. That's what I'm looking for. But I keep having to rinse my plate off and put it back in the freezer so it's not quite as cold as it would have been. Maybe I'll try the bottom of it. Ah! Oh, I just dropped my spoon again. It's the second time that has happened. So this is what we're looking for. See how it's not really moving a bunch? That's what we need. It is the next day and I am taking a look at what I wanted to be my grape jelly. And let me just show you what it looks like. Okay, so these are the ones I'm taking downstairs. I still need to label them, but you can kind of see that it's not quite like a jelly, but it's thicker than a syrup. So I will still use this. You can kind of tell in this one. It's like, let's see, can you tell? It's like gelatinous in a way, but it's still very liquidy. I mean, it's much better than last year's. Absolutely 100% better than last year's. I will actually show you my last year's fail so that you can compare it to this year's fail. I will still use this so you can just see it like sloshing around in there. We can still use it in our oatmeal. We can still use it on toast. It'll just need to be a little bit here and there because it is quite liquidy still. So that's what that looks like. I'm gonna show you what the last year's looks like so you have something to compare it to though. This is my last year's, and as you can see, it does not move. And it's like solid. It does not come out. Even if I tip it upside down, it doesn't slide out. I want to show you. It's like it's not good. It's not good. But I will say that this year's is better. So Thanks for joining me for today's video. Hope you learned nothing from what you saw, except that everyone fails and I do it quite often. So until next time, thanks for joining. See you later.